Good day, everyone. So once again, I am Ms. Rochelda, and for the continuation of our discussion, um, I was assigned to discuss and research different studies that either supports or contradicts the mother tongue multilingual education. So I have here specific studies that either support or contradict the implementation of the Mtb-Mle, and I will also discuss it to you one by one along with its findings, with its summaries and methodologies. So let's begin. Let's have our first study. This study was conducted or researched by Wilbert Joseph I. de Guzman and Presley V. de Vera from the Pangasinan State University. And this was entitled The English Language Performance and Difficulties of Pupils in the Mother Tongue-Based Medium of Instruction. So this study investigated the status of elementary grade pupils' English proficiency, and it particularly targeted the grades 1, 2, and 3 pupils who are simultaneously taking up subjects in the mother tongue and English that are specifically integrated in their curricula. So this study further explains the adoption of Mtb-Mle, which it became as a beginning of a bigger movement for the DepEd and the Congress that solely relies on the findings of various and previous studies that elucidates the benefits of mother tongue as a language of instruction. So these studies also deduced that minority language pupils who gained literacy in their first language or mother tongue experience, they experienced higher academic achievement than students who learned in a second or third language. This also suggested that the second and third languages can be acquired more easily if a foundation in the first language is established early. So, excuse. The findings of this study revealed that the excuse that the academic performance level of the pupils in mother tongue have the same pattern as for the characteristics of their academic performance in English. So there was this study of Burton, and this was entitled Mother Tongue-Based Multilingual Education in the Philippines. This is a study of top-down policy and the implementation of the bottom-up. And this study indicated that teachers and parents' views of Mtb-Mle focused on the short-term benefits of policy and long-term disadvantages, while groups were overwhelmingly satisfied with the increase in student understanding. They expressed concern about the future implications for learning the specific language in that study, which is the Bicol, and this was rather than English. So through the support of the policy, they remain to be tapped in words and actions, especially in demonstrating their full adherence. So the result of the study that was conducted by Burton bear a significant implication on how a language policy is being managed, especially among the educational institutions. So the advent of such a policy holds true to the fact that it is delivered from the top to bottom approach rather than considering the ground level stakeholders. So this study also found out that students' linguistic skills in learning the mother tongue may be analogous to certain points with their skills in learning a second language such as English. So the further analysis of the mentioned findings reveals that the academic performance level the pupils in mother tongue appears to have exactly the same pattern as to the characteristics of their academic performance in English, just as what I have mentioned earlier. So it is a remarkable to note on the same sets of the comparable and contrasting features. So across the three groups, whether their subject is English or mother tongue, the consistency in the pattern may be dismissed as having occurred only incidentally, since it is not sound to conclude that learners' performance in English can be ideally projected to their performance in mother tongue or vice versa. These two different subjects presuppose different contents. Likewise, the language competencies or skills that was aimed by the two subjects to develop not also or to develop not just one but the common between them. So the only similarity between the two subjects is that they are both language subjects. As such, it may be the case that students' linguistic skills in learning the mother tongue may be analogous at certain points with their skills in learning a second language such as English. So therefore, this study conducted entitled English Language Performance and Difficulties of Pupils in the Mother Tongue-Based Medium of Instruction agrees the implementation of the Mtb-Mle, which have resulted that MTB helps in the learning of the pupils which are on grades 1, 2, and 3. So now let's have the next study. Another study, which is a grounded theory case study conducted by Naomi Fillmore, and she was a bachelor of our on the Griffith University, and this study was entitled "The Mother Tongue-Based Multilingual Education Policy: Its Implementation." So this dissertation examined Filipino Mtb-Mle policies and their implementation in Mindanao. So one of the most remote and linguistically diverse regions of the country. So this study begins with a review of the current literature related to Mtb-Mle itself, and also it discusses the linguistic, historical, and modern context in which current Filipino initiative sits. And this in this review of related literature, it suggests policy and implementation as the basic areas of the research rather than the validity of the MTB itself. So this study also found out that the policies which underpin the national Mtb-Mle program may be considered supportive, and this was according to the current thinking on Mtb-Mle policy and excuse, articulated through Malone's research or Malone's framework. Further, these policies are by almost all stakeholders. This note that this has created an environment where stakeholders feel confident and encouraged to accept and implement the Mtb-Mle. So the concern of this research was to determine the level of support of the current Mtb-Mle policies that have created for the Mtb-Mle in the Philippines. And it also uh, concerns with the different challenges that has been encountered in the implementation of these policies, as well as the aids which have facilitated during the implementation. So Although a positive environment is in place, there are still certain number of challenges towards the successful implementation of MTB-MLE in Mindanao. So this was identified by this research or by this study that the most common challenges by the informants and uh, also supported by the literature itself were the lack of teacher training provided and the difficulties in producing appropriate learning materials. So aids to the implementation also found out that the most important of these being support from groups outside of the government such as the NGOs or other community members such as teachers or principal. The aides found out in this study that um, it should be strengthened by DepEd in order to minimize some of the opposing challenges identified. So also, or furthermore, the Philippines has taken a bold step in becoming the first Southeast Asian country to put the national Mtb-Mle policy in place and to implement it across the 19 language groups here in the Philippines. Though there are still many challenges to be addressed, there are also opportunities to strengthen those things which are working and supporting the implementation of the Mtb-Mle. So what is positive and encouraging is that policymakers, implementers, and teachers together have taken the first step in creating an education system that is inclusive of students from all language backgrounds. It is anticipated that the findings and recommendations of this study, drawn from the Filipino example, that will be of benefit to policymakers and researchers both in the Philippines. So as DepEd seeks to scale up its current Mtb-Mle program and abroad, other countries seek to legislate and implement new national Mtb-Mle programs. So, in short, from the specific data or specific information that we have discussed, it therefore concludes that this study partly agrees and partly contradicts the implementation of the Mtb-Mle as it has such various challenges. So just like what you can see here in the picture, it um, it draws the different challenges of the Mtb-Mle implementation. Number one is the resources, the knowledge or habits, the nature of the DepEd, the implementation strategy, and external factors. So this therefore illustrates that the implementation of Mtb-Mle are partly helpful and partly challenging. So now let's have our last study. So it was entitled the implementation of mother tongue based multilingual education in grade 1 in the public elementary schools in Pangasinan, and this study was conducted by Nora T. Cruz, and she came from the Dumalandan Center Integrated School. So this study assessed how the grade 1, so as you can observe, the following research that I have chosen was conducted during the elementary or in the lower grades because the uh, majority of the studies believe that just like what I have mentioned earlier, it is most effective when it is being taught during the foundation of the child. So this study um, were faring in the mother tongue as a learning subject. So it also investigates the grade 1 teachers' proficiency in mother tongue and as well as the problems that they have encountered with the implementation of the Mtb-Mle. So with the Mtb-Mle, that comes growing apprehension from the teachers that are teaching in mother tongue based program. It requires a vastly different set of skills, and many of which they do not have at the moment. So the teachers are particularly concerned with the practical issues such as producing homegrown and contextually sensitive teaching and reading materials. Also, it is concerned of the uh, how to actually develop greater fluency in their own languages. So the broad categories of materials that are needed to implement an Mtb-Mle curriculum includes early literacy materials in the mother tongue, a variety of non grade narrative reading materials, which is also used on the mother tongue, and also the possibly subject area materials in the mother tongue, materials to transition from the mother tongue into the second language, and then of course materials as appropriate for the educational system in the second language. So in most cases, appropriate mother tongue materials will be lacking and will need to be prepared. So this study also mentioned that educational materials in the mother tongue will be likewise have to be constructed, especially by those who are already proficient in writing the language, and with those who have appropriate educational backgrounds or experiences in constructing learning materials. So likely the most technically demanding skills that this research found out, or the needs of the structure for the primary literacy materials, is that the effective materials will require knowledge of how to present the symbol to sound rules and the sound to meaning conventions for writing the language. So in a way, it aligns with the students' capabilities. So in view of these observations and data pertinent to the implementation of Mtb-Mle, and consequently the teachers and administrators' knowledge, needs, preparedness, and attitude towards it is that this present study is created. So it looks into how grade 1 pupils and teachers in the public elementary schools take the implementation of the mother tongue as a learning subject and as the medium of instruction. So these studies results also shows that the majority of the instructional objectives in the mother tongue as a subject are not being met, as indicated by the areas which they are found weak. So particularly here, we have the grammar awareness, vocabulary development, and reading comprehension, which are primarily concerned. So the findings of this study reveals how grade 1 pupils in the public elementary schools have been average in their level of performance in the mother tongue as a subject. So particularly in areas that target the vocabulary and the concept development, the grammar analysis, and reading comprehension. So moreover, the grade 1 teachers makes use of other languages or dialects such as Filipino or Ilocano in aid of the mother tongue as instructional base. So there are serious problems this study that is concerned, and this was the implementation of the Mtb-Mle, such as the attendance to relevant trainings, and the provision of evaluation of instrument. So the grade 1 teachers, with the implementation of the mother tongue as instructional based learning subject, has that great challenge within